Blackboard to cloud, okay, because I've got to be able to share this. This is terrible because I'm looking up at you, so it's not a very good image. But look, thank you so much for joining me. And just to explain, because we've moved into open plan, I can't do this at my desk, and I've had to come into one of these purposeful meeting rooms. And I did a dummy run the other day and it worked really well, but oh my goodness, now it's playing up. So thank you for your patience. I'm sorry you were waiting for so long. So I've just come from the lecture and we worked through a whole range we worked through the activities on the Blackboard side. Just let me get my running notes out. And I guess basically I'd like to ask you how you're settling in and how have you found the materials on the Blackboard site for this week? Have you been able to access them all so far?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry there was a hassle with some of them. I still don't know why, but the Blackboard site, as I said to the internal students this afternoon, the Blackboard site is the, so I'm getting some people to chat. Hello, Judy. Judy, is it Judy? Oh, no, Ainsley. Hello, Ainsley. Can you see us? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Sorry?
It wasn't me. I didn't.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry. So I'll try and get the chat button up just so we can see. Oh, here we go. Yes, good. This is a bit like watching the Truman Show. Oh dear. Look, it'll get better. So I'm pleased to see you all, so thanks for joining us. So the Blackboard site is the one-stop shop for the unit. So it's there for internal and external students. So please always make sure you go to the Blackboard site. And each week I'll send you an announcement and a reminder of things that are happening. So always check your announcements. And so you will see from the Blackboard site that there's down the left-hand menu that, you know, the assessment, there's different tabs. So one of the things I wanted to emphasise for all of you is that QUT has a really rigid policy on assessment. And on the assessment tab, if you open it and scroll down, you'll see there's an area where if you need to apply for an extension, you can do so. It's online. And I just wanted to remind everyone right from the beginning, because, you know, things happen in life. You might get sick or something, you might have to do extra shifts at work and you'll have to apply for an extension. So it's an electronic process. So you fill in the form and you need some kind of documentation to support it. So you might need a medical certificate, or if it's a personal matter that, you know, is difficult, it might be a letter from a counsellor, whatever. It's private. I don't see that. But you need some kind of documentation to support why you're applying for an extension. You upload that, and then that we get the information, and then you usually get an approval of extension, and then when you submit your assignment, you make sure you include that approval. But the big rule to remember is if you're having difficulty meeting a deadline, you must apply for an extension before the due date. So that's just in the sense of housekeeping and, you know, getting into the swing of how things work at QUT. That's really important for you to remember. So next week I'll talk more about the assessment tasks, but I wanted to focus a little bit today about the general feel of the unit, the Blackboard site, and about the activities. And I took the video camera down today just to video some of the students. It was a bit, we're in this terrible old tiered lecture theatre, so we really drew the short straw. We didn't get a lovely big workshop room, which is unfortunate. So it was very noisy, but I've just got some images of the students workshopping. So I thought you might like to see that, just to see what was happening with the internal students in the workshop. So thank you for taking seriously the Padlets. It was terrific to see the pre-learning Padlet. And as I said in my message, every week is structured the same for the whole group and for the discipline breakout groups, and that we have 3 components of learning. We've got the pre-learning to kind of warm you up, get you ready for what's going to happen, or to get you to capture some thoughts, or to do some activities, or watch a video that leads into the focus of the workshop. And then there's the post-learning, and that's something you do afterwards in your own time, whether you're internal or external. And that's just a way to draw things together. And as I said to the students today, we ran out of time to actually look in detail at the PowerPoint of what is curriculum. So I've asked them to go over that, and then next week I'll start our session next week with what are some of those really big ideas about the curriculum. And as I said to them today, you know, the curriculum's not neutral. And in some countries, the curriculum is used deliberately to kind of get a particular view about things, to indoctrinate, future citizens. Excuse me. So let's not be naive about how powerful curriculum documents can be. In fact, in the Soviet Union at the moment, there's a big push to rewrite the history curriculum so that a certain view of Russian foreign policy, etc., is being positioned, and that teachers are then expected to teach from that curriculum. So it's quite interesting, to see how curriculum documents give insights into what's valued and what's, important in a country. With Australia, one thing that's very interesting, later on next week we'll talk more about, what informs what we do, but the Melbourne Declaration is the National Statement for Education Goals in Australia. It's actually due for new renewal. It was signed off in 2008 and it should have been done last year, but it's not. They're still, arguing about what should be in it. But they have this big statement and it's named after the city in which it's signed off in Australia. So we had the Hobart Declaration, the Adelaide Declaration and the Melbourne Declaration. And what is really interesting in the Melbourne Declaration, and I'll get you to have a look at that, not perhaps next week, but the week after, is there's a very strong statement about reconciliation, about learning about Indigenous people's heritage, past, present, and valuing them as Australians. So it's quite interesting to see how documents position certain priorities. Another word that for the first time was ever used in Australian policy in a national statement on goals for schooling in this country is Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia. It's one of 3 cross-curriculum priorities in Australian curriculum. And that was a first, and I often think if that statement hadn't been there, there might have been less opportunities in the national curriculum to make sure that there is some emphasis on Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia. So curriculum documents are powerful. So pre-learning, the workshop, learning and post-learning, that's how we fashion it every week, and that's whether you're with me or when you go in week 4 to your discipline breakout groups with your specialist areas. So very, very, I guess it's a kind of a clear structure, and that's how we organise things. And you've got your textbook, Marsh, and we've got a lovely doggy enrolling in the unit.
Yes, we do.
That's all right. I love dogs. I love
time or walk time. So
doggies like their walks. Walkies. That's fine. Oh dear, they have this little built-in time clock, don't they? And when it's dinner and when it's ready for walks. Yes. So the Padlet, first Padlet got you to think about, what curriculum means to you when you first encountered it. And there's some fabulous comments up there. And then the second Padlet was more of an opportunity for you to introduce yourself and say hello. And in the hello, we've got someone else coming in, Teresa. Hi.
Hi.
And in the workshop today, I actually did Globe Bingo with them. And just to save mucking about with this computer because it's been playing up, I printed off the hard copy of Globe Bingo. You've got that on your Blackboard side. I printed out the black and white copy and I ran it off, and I got them to fill it in today. And it was very noisy. I've done a little bit of videoing of it to post on the Blackboard site, but it was interesting to see. And in the feedback when we shared, well, what idea, start again. I held up the wrong one. I'm sorry, everyone. It's because I've come straight from the lecture clearing my head. Let me just show you that again. Sorry, everyone. Hello, have we got Matthew here? Hi, Matthew. This one, sorry everyone, Globe Bingo. So I got them to play that, and then we talked about how you might use it. And this week, at the end of this week, I'll post a different version of Globe Bingo because this one's just got question and answers running down the page great activity, and you can see by the questions relate to an area or an aspect of our global links. So, for example, is wearing something that was made in another country. Can name a famous sports person or musician from Africa. Can speak the language of another country. You can doctor that to make it specific to your discipline area. So if you've got a maths class, you might want to have more general knowledge questions about maths. If it's history, very specific questions about history or Australian history, whatever you wish. So don't be afraid. These activities we'll share with you. Make sure you think, well, you know, I can vary it. That's not set in stone. And indeed, as I said to the students today, I like to play it. I like to have this in a grid. So I've got three sort of squares that way, 3 that way, and that way there's like 9 squares. And I get the kids to play bingo if they have to get the answers to the first 3 horizontally or vertically going down or diagonally. So I'll give you an example of a different way that Glow Bingo can be formatted, but it's a lot of fun. And I also, I have a variation on the questions in the sense of I ask 3 questions. So I'll share that with you. But Glow Bingo, a great way to get your class, I wouldn't use it on field studies when you do your professional placement in schools because you're fitting into someone else's schedule. But when you've graduated and you've got your own classes, this is a really terrific fun activity to get the kids to interact and to find something out about their general knowledge in relation to your subject or in relation to the first topic you're going to teach for the year. And I use that today as a kind of an icebreaker to get the students interacting with one another. So that was one of the activities we did today in the tute. The next thing we did, I'm just getting my notes here, was we had a general talk about the nature of teaching. And I said to the students too, one of the things I do want you to think about is your philosophy of teaching. You know, how is it you decided to move from your first career to become a teacher? Why? And that sort of was a segue into, well, what are some qualities that teachers have to have and demonstrate, or perhaps could demonstrate? And then we linked that to the responses to the 3 movie extracts. I started out that session by explaining that when I first started teaching, I went to an incredibly disadvantaged school and I was totally unprepared for it. Nothing had prepared me for the sort of problems and disadvantages that those kids had. I felt very inadequate, and you know, when I first started, it was all about teaching the content of the subject, because in those days I started by teaching English and history and civics and citizenship education. But as I kind of fumbled my way through the first few weeks, then I realised that, gosh, these are people in front of me. These are people with very different needs and experiences and lots of issues happening in their lives. I've got to learn about my students. So, hello Tess, hi.
Hi.
So it's really important that you want to work with young people if you want to be a teacher. And it's also really important that you're willing to try and get to know those kids, because they're people. And some of these kids come to school today and they have terrible lives. You know, they can come from homes where they're abused, or they can come from homes where there's a massive addiction problem. So, you know, there's all sorts of things can happen. And it's really important that you're a stable adult figure in their lives. There's a Latin phrase, in loco parentis, we're like parent figures in the sense of offering them some stability. So I guess really the first part of our session today, we focused a lot on, well, what is it about teaching? What do teachers do? And then I got the students to have a look at the videos, and we talked about the different attitudes, the different strengths and weaknesses that those teachers, the fictional teachers, who were portraying in those 3 video extracts. And you know, passion, commitment. So we aired some of these qualities. And then, and here's the right handout this time, I had the hard copy of the diamond ranking activity, and individually, so they chatted amongst it in their rows, and then they had a go at listing from the top, meaning the most prioritised, down to the bottom, to the least prioritised, in the sense of the qualities. And I shared with the students too, there's another way you can use a ranking activity. I love them because with a ranking activity, there's no right or wrong answer. So, it's a great way to tease out ideas about a topic or an issue, but they're not right or wrong. It's the discussion that follows about, well, what did you put at the top, John? Or Julie, why did you put those two comments as your most highly ranked activity? What is it about that makes that important to you? And then why did you put this particular quality at the end as the least important? Important, but least important. So what I've done that I also like to do is I might take a topic or a definition, and instead of having a blank sheet, I'll actually use an A4 piece of paper, and I'll have statement 1, statement 2, I'll have statements down to 9, and I'll have 9 different statements about that topic. Then I'll laminate it, then I'll cut it up, and I'll put the statements in an envelope. And I do enough statements, so for a whole class I might have, say, 6 envelopes, so 6, and I'll get them to sit in 5 groups of 5, so 5, 6 are 30, there's my grade 9 class, and I'll say, right, elect a leader and elect a spokesperson to describe. So the leader opens the envelope, takes the statements out, and they sit together in this group and they put them on the table, and it might be a statement about colonisation. Colonisation was a destructive process where one powerful country overtakes another. Or colonisation was where wealthy, powerful European powers brought civilizations to the heathens. So a whole range of really controversial statements. And I get the kids to rank them by actually, in a group, positioning the statements. So they use their fingers, it's tactile, they actually position the statements like that. And then I walk around and say, hey, Julie, what did your team put at the top? Let's share what the different groups have done. And so it's the discussion that follows. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Have I explained that clearly enough for you? So you can, if you're an English teacher, you could have a statement about, poetry or about a book, a whole series of statements, positive and negative statements. If you're a maths teacher, it might be about a key concept in maths. You can tease out the content, but it's a great way to get kids to interact with some of the big ideas, and you can use it to throw forth ideas. So look, I've been rabbiting on a little bit. Do you want to say anything or add any questions at this stage? I've got Jess and Caitlin. You're all very quiet. No, is that making sense so far?
Yeah.
Yeah? Matthew?
I thought that with Robin Williams with his Good Will Hunting, was that the one? No. Dead Poets. Sorry, apologies. Where he was getting the students to pull out the chapter at the beginning of the poetry book to say, the exercise here is not regurgitating someone else's ideas. It's about trying to make your own priorities, take your own interpretations of the material and work through that. And so giving students tools that they can use to express their own opinions.
Yes, and also to getting them to think critically about what they're reading and doing. I think he illustrated that quite well with that standpoint, where he got on top of the desk.
Yep.
And said the view's different from up here. Great. So different strategies to teachers, different strategies, different ways of getting kids to see things differently. So, we've talked about the Globe Bingo activity in the sense of the introduction. Then that ranking activity is very much involved in that, and getting them to articulate why. And then also in a social environment, a respectful social environment, seeing that other people have very different views about that. So that notion that, there are different perspectives that are shared in the same classroom. Yeah. What about the other two videos? Jess, did you watch the videos at all? Did you get a chance to see them?
No, I haven't had a chance yet.
Have a look and see what you think. That's fine, because I know you're all busy and most of you have been working full-time as well. So have a look and see what the teachers did. Were they too confronting in their approach? Julia Roberts, for example, have a see about what she does. She starts out quite unconventionally, and it's quite emotional right towards the end. So some people might think that's a bit tricky, a bit confronting. You might not want to do strategies like that. Steph says, I found Julia Roberts' speech very powerful. Scott, yeah. The background noise, yes, the background noise can be disputing. So don't forget to mute your mics if you're not talking. Thank you for that reminder.
I was just going to...
who's that? Morris.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Hello, can you hear me?
And yeah, okay, what's your name?
My name's Annie.
Annie, sorry, I can only see Morris there. Annie?
No, it wouldn't let me write Annie for some
That's
reason.
all right, don't worry. Yeah, what were you going to say?
Yeah, just my power's about to run out on my laptop. But anyway, the first video I really enjoyed and found quite poignant, because it's that thing of the whole world of the students being so... Yeah, and that is such a barrier for them to be able to learn. And so I really want to see that film now to see how...
Oh, good, Annie. That's great. And you know, everyone, when you have a look at it, if you haven't yet, when you do have a look at it, there's an activity Cross the Line. So I'll make a note to myself when I get back to my desk, because that's a great activity. I've used that several times, but in a different way. So all the little strategies we share with you, they might seem quite trivial, but you can adapt them and vary them. And I really want you to experiment with them, because what we're trying to do is just, you know, you're putting your finger in the water. We want you to get some ideas about what you can actually do with kids in a classroom before you go on your visit to school. So thanks for sharing that, Annie. That's a really good point. I want to see all of them. Yeah, there's so many films we can see. And next week I'm going to share a video with a real life young teacher. She's only been teaching 9 years, and she's just been nominated. Yasu. She's Sri Lankan origin, and she's on the executive of the Australian Curriculum Studies Association that I'm on. I edit a journal called Curriculum Perspectives, and Yasu's one of our lovely young fresh-faced teachers, because we're all too old. And she's been shortlisted for this Global Teacher Award, which is amazing. And I've got a lovely interview that was done with her on SBS. So we'll look at a real-life teacher next week and the sort of work Yasu does. She teaches at Rooty Hill State High School in New South Wales. And I'll also publish a little thing she and another lovely young teacher on the executive wrote for me, because I was talking about teacher professional development and you know, professional reading, and they have 2 little examples of how they use professional reading to map to some of the things they want to do to show that they demonstrate in the Australian professional standards for teachers. We'll talk more about that next week, but like most professions now, there are statements of professional standards that teachers are expected to meet at different stages, and indeed you will be demonstrating how you've met the graduate teacher stage when you leave this course at the end of next year. So we'll talk more about that, but I think it's really good, isn't it, to sort of see someone in practice. So there's 3 fictional examples there that I'd love you to engage with, and then, as I said, next week we'll have a look at Yasu and her story and what she says she tries to do when she teaches her students. Thank you for that. Yeah, so again, just as a way to, you know, share some ideas. So, oh God, it's all chaos here. I just dropped my notes. So it's because I'm not used to this space, this new building. So some other questions or comments, please don't, I don't want to hog this and, you know, talk 24/7. What else would you like to say? Any other ideas? Anyone who's listening in the background who hasn't had a chance to comment yet? No? Will I keep rabbiting on, or you're all too polite? Am I making sense so far?
Yes.
Yeah? Yeah? Okay. All right. You're all too easy and quiet and well played. They were very noisy in the lecture, I have to tell you. They laughed at me because I stuffed up a couple of things. It was quite funny with the sound. We were in this really old lecture theatre on campus. So I'm talking to you now in the UB $95 million building. Yes, $95 million, can you believe it? So everything's whiz bang and changed. We're still working out how to use it. And then I've had to teach. I've just come from the really old decrepit. It's probably 35, 40 years old, and it's just falling apart. And last week the air conditioning failed, but thank God it didn't fail today. So it's funny, I've come from one world of teaching to the other here. So Yes, so we did the ranking activity and then I got them to share their ideas. So some people volunteered to read what they thought were really significant attitudes and values and beliefs and or dispositions, if you like, that you need to have as a teacher. So do you want to share? What do you think is really important for becoming a teacher? What qualities do teachers need to have? Well, what should teachers aim to do? Tess, what do you reckon? You need to unmute your mic to answer.
Compassion, maybe?
Compassion, yeah. That's good. So to be, another student today in the internal group used the word empathy, to be able to empathise with, to have compassion for. Yeah, okay, thank you. Anything else whilst you're holding the mic?
You sort of got to have a balance of compassion and sort of want to be, I try and find the right word, sort of being really strict and sort of being...
Yes, you can't be a pushover or they'll run riot. Yeah.
Yeah. Like having, you know, set procedure and like sort of carrying out your behaviour in a certain way rather than just being compassionate.
You have to be, there's a Latin phrase, in loco parentis, we're like parent figures. We're like wise, sensible, stable figures in the classroom. And if you think about the fact that some kids do come from homes where there's not a lot of stability, where perhaps a disagreement is solved by a punch to the face, it's actually really important that we show there are other ways of expressing a difference of opinion and respecting difference. So, for example, even that diamond ranking activity where there might be very firm beliefs about what's important and what's not important. What matters is that we can share those beliefs, listen to the beliefs of others in a very civilised, socially acceptable way, because we live in a democratic society where citizens have rights and responsibilities. And indeed, I spent 16 years in schools before coming to QUT some 20-something years ago, but I still have close ties to the profession. And I had 4 rules for my classroom that I sort of adhered by, that I tried to have that balance, you know, between being firm and responsible and showing care and compassion and having fun with them too. Be on time, come prepared to learn, respect your rights and the rights of others to learn, ask for help. They were my 4 big, and I would explain that right at the beginning, and I didn't care if they were grade 12s. I would say grade 8s, but now, of course, year 7 has come into the secondary school since I started teaching. So whether they're grade 7s, you need some kind of ground rules for how you operate in your classroom, because in secondary schools, remember, they come from a range of different subjects. They might have come from phys ed on the oval, they might have come from the science lab, they might have come from the drama department, but hey, they're in your class now, and this is your little world with them, and these are your rules. And they need regularity, they need routine, they need to know where they sit with you and what your expectations are. And can you think back to your days at school? Did any of you have, you know, screamers? You know, those teachers who just go ballistic and yell and scream and rant and rave?
Absolutely.
Did any of you have those? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you know, often kids will do that. Terry, you did you? Did you have a teacher?
Yeah, but not that the teacher was provoked in the first place.
Okay, well, sometimes teachers get provoked very easily. So I guess what I'm saying to you is ranting and raving and losing your block isn't always the most effective way to deal with kids, because some kids will deliberately do it to get a stir. You know, how long do you reckon it'll take me to make Sir lose it? Or how long do you think it'll take me to make Miss lose it? You know, so what I'm trying to say is it's very important in your philosophy of teaching, in your way to go about doing things, that you have these procedures to get things organised. Yeah, but you'll develop that as you go through your career, but it's important to start thinking about it. And then when you go on your professional placement, you can observe different teachers doing different things, and you know what I mean, you'll get a feel for how it can be done, and you might find inspirational practice good practice, and you might find some non-inspirational practice, and you might think, well, I definitely won't be like that. So it's just tuning in and you know, being aware of these things. So we had a big discussion about that. So thank you for sharing, Tess, your qualities. Terry, do you want to share some? You know, what do you think? We're talking about the ranking activity. If you were to rank, you know, statements about what are important in terms of teaching, what would you put at the top?
At the top.
Or the most valued? You know, if you were doing the ranking activity, what would you put as number one?
Vision.
Vision. Now,
Yeah.
by vision, you mean a sense of purpose, or what? Can you tease that out a bit for us?
Oh. Yeah. Well, I don't like being put on the spot like this.
I'm sorry, Terry. Oh, well, I don't want to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to get you engaging. So if you don't want to, that's fine.
No, it's fine. I've got to. Hey, I'm choosing going to teaching. I've got to get out of my comfort zone sometime.
Yeah. So a vision, a sense of purpose, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, you're not. It's not a daily grind, one day after the other, doing the same thing.
No, every day is different.
You've got a long-term purpose, and
yeah,
and you may have the children for 1 year, or right, and you never see that, and you never teach them.
That's true. That's true.
But you might get the same children as they progress from year to year.
Yes.
By school life
right.
at your locality.
Yes. And, you know, one of the most rewarding things is if you can get them in year 11 and take them into year 12, you really get to know those students then. That's going to be, you know, so rewarding. And in fact, one of my master's students at the moment, it's amazing, I taught her in grade 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. Can you believe that? I haven't seen her for years, and she came in, she wanted to do a master's, and I thought, oh my God, this is just amazing. And I taught a brother and a sister. How's that? So thank you for she said. Anything else you want to add?
Oh, all I'm getting at is that it's not the daily battle. It's the you know, if you want to put a combat terminology, you're trying to win a war which, and the victory is they're prepared for the next stage.
That's an interesting. That's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the next stage. Yeah, and of course, ultimately, the next stage is these young people going into the world as citizens, isn't it?
Exactly.
Getting on with their lives, and if they've learnt, you know, and as I said earlier, you know, they have certain things they've learned at home that aren't always very good either. I mean, they might be blessed. They might come from homes where they're loved and they're supported and they're given everyone, or they might come from homes where they're not, where they've suffered, you know, there might be awful conflict, domestic violence, you don't know. So we just want to do the very best for them. And we are very important, I think, as teachers in that way. Thank you for that. Thanks, Terry. Jess, do you want to add something? What would you put at the top of your list for teachers?
Enthusiasm.
Enthusiasm, yeah.
Yep.
Wanting to be there. Yeah, good. Anything else?
Knowledge of that subject matter.
Yes, and that's something that we're always working towards achieving. We're always learning and growing with our knowledge. I was telling the group today when I had my first modern history class in year 11, I had to teach US neo-imperialism in South America. It was a depth study, which meant that was the topic I had to teach for 8 weeks. I nearly died, because I'd never studied that at uni. I knew nothing about it, and I was barely a step ahead of the kids. It was nerve-wracking. But I learned a lot the hard way that year, and I don't think I taught it very well at all, partly because I was coming from such a low base. And then the next year, I was so much better. And then I got adventurous. And I was telling the class, I started showing documentaries. I had this great documentary from an Australian documentary filmmaker, David Bradbury, and he had this great thing about what was happening in Chile. Chile hasta cuándo? Chile, how long? And then I found this fantastic movie, an American movie called Missing. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a really old one, and it stars Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek. And it's the story of Jack Lemmon's son, who never got on with his dad. His dad always thought he was a bit of a no-hoper. And he went to Chile, fell in love with Sissy Spacek, and they did all this really interesting thing, but they got caught up in the opposition movement to the corrupt government. And the son goes missing. And Jack Lemmon decides to come down and sort things out and find his son and get him back on track to get a career and a proper job. And it's two stories. It's the parallel story of Jack Lemmon, this very traditional US citizen. I honour the flag, I love the president, and all his traditional beliefs. And his learning as he goes to Chile to try to find his son who's missing. His son just disappears. That in fact, the American government's been covertly supporting this corrupt government. And it's his kind of awful awakening as a US citizen that, hey, that country I've always loved and admired hasn't done the right thing in this part of South America. And then the other story is Sissy Spacek, who loves the son, trying through all their connections to find out what happened to him. And it captures what actually did happen to the resistance fighters in that period. They were round up by the junta, taken to the stadium, the football stadium, and executed. So I used excerpts from that film, and oh, look, I tell you, by the end of 6 years, because I taught that unit for the 6 years I was at that school, I just loved teaching that unit. And I felt this sense of growth as a teacher, because I could do, I kind of experimented and I just, I learned so much. And of course I learned it the hard way. I made lots of mistakes along the way. But yeah, we never stop learning. So the content is important, and so is our enthusiasm and ways of finding engaging ways to get kids to connect with the content, because they might think, oh my God, miss, US imperialism in South America, duh. Why have I got to learn about that? And, fair enough. And it's probably even more challenging for you guys as beginning teachers, because these kids have got Google at their fingertips, they are spoilt rotten with accessing materials and things. So our challenge is to work with, your environment, what you've got with learners today, but get that deep learning. Because one of the problems with Google and surfing the net and all that is it's often very superficial knowledge. And kids often, taking stuff from websites, don't often dig beneath and get those critical thinking capacities. Who's created this website? For what purpose? Whose voices are represented? Who's missing? Why? Do you see what I mean? Okay, Caitlin, do you want to share? What do you think is important for teachers?
I think that it's really important to create a positive relationship, but that you don't be their friend.
That's right. Good done. Well done. Yeah. You need that sense of distance. Yeah. You're the adult figure. You're caring and you're compassionate, but you're there to guide them. And exactly, you're not their friend. Yeah. Good point. So where does that lead? Well, I guess what I really want you to do, as I said earlier, is to think about your philosophy. What sort of teacher are you going to be? I shared my rules. I'll put them on the Blackboard site if you find that helpful. Where do you want to take it? And then thinking about the curriculum, and the PowerPoint, makes very clear some of where the word comes from, what the duration of, how it's shifted over time, what different theorists say about curriculum. But I would also like you to think that curriculum is contested, and it can be used and it can be misused. And currently, for example, in Hong Kong, and as you know, Hong Kong went back to control of the Communist China in 1997, where they've had this great traditional, very liberal education in Hong Kong. Now, there's lots of concern about the fact that the Chinese government on the mainland, from Beijing, is really trying to control the school curricula in Hong Kong in a particular way to sort of make sure they're shaping communist citizens. So it's really interesting to see what's happening to the curriculum in Hong Kong, and a lot of the academics and teachers are trying to protest. But interesting times there with the school curricula. So we'll have a good look at the Melbourne Declaration next week when we start to drill down more specifically into what this unit is about, because it's like the top tier policy statement. It sets out what the big goals are for schooling in Australia, and the Melbourne Declaration, as I said, hasn't been updated. So the Australian curriculum was written from those goals. And the people who were charged with developing the Australian curriculum, which we'll start to look at next week, had to fill the goals, had to make sure they met the goals of the Melbourne Declaration. So what goes into curriculum documents is very powerful. And right now in Queensland, for example, we've got a new curriculum document for each of the learning areas in the senior school. And you'll come to examine those documents as well. These are Queensland specific syllabuses for Year 11 and Year 12 when you get to do the last 3 curriculum units. So the first 3 curriculum units in your degree are with us in the nature of curriculum and pedagogy are focused on the Australian curriculum, 1 to 10. Oh, so, let me rephrase that, years 7 to 10. And then in the next 3, they focus on when you're in your second year of your course, it's the 3 that focus on the senior curriculum in your senior area. And for the first time in Queensland this year, Year 11 is being implemented from the new syllabus. And the new syllabuses have an external assessment component which never used to exist for about 40 years. We've always had school-based assessment, so major changes are underway, and you'll deal with those too. But getting back to my point about curriculum and the focus of this week, what is curriculum? It's really important for you to think about teaching, what teachers should do, because teachers work from curriculum documents. So we're kind of agents of learning in that sense, and a lot of what we should be doing is shaped by the curriculum documents, but what we do in the classroom is so powerful because that's where the rubber hits the road, that's where things happen. So how are we going for time? Now, any other questions? So we talked about that today. How are we going? Has anyone got anything they want to ask me at this stage? Is this helpful, me talking through? Is this helpful for you?
Yes, definitely.
Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, yeah, I have a question. You see, my name's changed again. Sorry about that. This is Annie.
Annie, Annie, have you got full personalities here? How did you get this? You on someone else's computer?
Yeah, my laptop died. But anyway, you mentioned before about the difficulty of confronting students who have really hard home lives and things like that.
Well, confronting is that I've never encountered it before. Yeah.
Yeah, and I spoke to someone the other day about that as well, who's also in the Masters of Education program. And I'm just curious about what kind of supports there are.
If ever, and sometimes you get this sense with kids, you sense something. So you try and very delicately, you can't pry into their lives, but if you have a really strong concern that like a child might be abused, and we have to report sexual abuse, or one of my dear friends that I started teaching with, and we've stayed, it's a long time ago, we've stayed friends. She had a foster kid in her class, and this foster kid was always hungry. And I don't know how she found out. She just twigged. She said, "Have you had your lunch today?" She said, "Oh no, miss, my foster mum doesn't give me lunch." And Chris was horrified. So Chris went back to the staff room, and to cut a long story short, Chris would bring in lunch for her every day. So this kid, part of the routine became, she'd come, "Hi, Mrs. I won't say her last name." And Chris would say, "Oh, look, we've got this leftover food here. Make sure you have this sandwich later today." And then the next thing that happened was this kid had no pencils. And Chris gave her pencils, and she'd still come without pencils. And she said, "Well, what's happened to that pencil I gave you?" "Oh, my foster mum takes it off me." So there was this horrible situation where this poor kid was being fostered, and Chris was so worried about her. So Chris went to the school guidance officer, of course, and reported it. And then one day, this family moved on. So they instigated some process of investigation, but that's one that comes immediately to mind. So generally within the school there is a process that you go to the guidance officer or the school counsellor. Different schools will have different systems, but the minute you suspect something, you must follow through. But if it's more, I can tell you where I didn't handle this well, and I look back and I wish I'd handled it better. He was a lovely boy, and he was normally really good, and I taught him in a Year 11, and this was Year 12, and he came really late this day to school, and he was very dishevelled, and he was in a foul mood. He walked into the classroom. He was late for the lesson. He knocked over a chair. I said, John. And he went, and he sat down. He was slammed his books. And I thought, oh my God, someone's in a stinker of a mood today. And I can't remember what happened. And another kid said something. And he said, shut up. And I said, John, that's enough. Stop. And he swore and he stormed out of the room. I thought, what is going on? So I just left it. And then later that day, I spotted him. I said, John, we need to talk. And so he came up. I said, look, that's not like you. He said, and he was nearly in tears. He's this big, strapping kid. And he said, I just had a bust up with my dad. And and I looked at him. I could see bruises coming out, So he'd obviously had a physical altercation, and God, his father must have been big, because this kid was well over 6'2". He was a big, strong kid. And I said, well, look, sometimes I know that's really hard, but you have to learn to deal with that. And I thought, oh, what do I say? And and then I said, well, I just had to talk to you about it, because you're normally, I value you in my class. And then he sort of got really upset. He said, oh, sorry, miss. That's okay. I just want to know that you are okay. And I said, are you okay to go home? He said, oh, yeah. But I thought, oh, dear. And then I thought, what do I do about that? Do I report it? And he was okay the next day. It could have been a one-off thing. But I just think that we show them that we're concerned. Do you know what I mean? It's hard. But if you suspect it, and of course, the other thing you've got to be careful of. I mean, I've reported kids who I think are doing drugs. When you do your playground duty, you take it so seriously. You walk around, you say hello to kids. So if ever something happens, you can say, I did my playground duty. I spoke, But at this particular school, there were these cars that always come at a certain time at lunchtime. And then we all twigged that kids would gravitate down the back and something was happening with drugs. So, you've got to have that sixth sense as a teacher. You've got to really feel for what's happening. But I think getting back to your question, I don't know if I'm really answering it very well, Annie. We reported, but we also show due diligence, and it doesn't hurt to say, are you okay today? Or just to show concern for kids. Does that make sense? Any other comments? I can give you so many different examples. I don't want to bore you witless, but I just think to have that concern, because some teachers don't. Do you know what I mean? Some teachers just, who cares? Let's get on to the next class. But I think we should care.
Because it just seems that behavioural problems are going to be generally going to be connected to family, or,
They can be.
Yeah. So
sometimes it's very hard.
Yeah. But trying to find that support for them.
Yes, it's very important.
Yeah.
And then also too, as I was saying earlier, if you want your classroom to be calm, to be well structured. Kids love routine. True story. One of my when I was a head of department, she was a student teacher, and this is years ago. We've become good friends. She taught at the UN school in New York in 9/11, and they had to go into lockdown because they could see the buildings, and some of the parents worked in those buildings. They locked down the school next to UN headquarters to wait to see which parents could come home to pick up their kids. And the UN crisis team came in. Because all the subways went, the electricity went, they had to camp in the school. And the crisis team said, the first thing you do tomorrow is you get the kids in a routine. And when they go into, war zones, terrible zones where there's dreadful abuse of human rights, whatever they do, get the kids in a routine. And that resonated with me. So I think a routine that you're firm, you're fair, you're consistent, you show concern. Do you know what I mean? You're that stable figure. And when you do activities like a ranking activity or Globe Bingo, you have fun, you have differences of opinions, but you do it respectfully to one another. So you try and give your kids the opportunities to learn new social skills in your classroom, because they are life skills. So I guess and that comes back to your philosophy of teaching. We don't get out of bed for $10,000 a day like the supermodels. They probably get out more for that now. But we come out because we care and we like to work with young people and we care about connecting with them. And if you don't like kids, get out now. Worst job in the world. You've got to really enjoy, you want to work with them because you value them. So I think if that becomes part of your philosophy, you tend to kind of roll with those punches. And what am I trying to say? That you tend to connect more easily to teachers who don't have those attitudes. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, Annie. I don't know if I've said that very well.
I think I'm also, sorry, just one final thing.
Yeah.
I'm also picking up that thing about boundaries.
Yes.
Because you seem to be, like in your stories, because there would be a part of me that would just want to save someone, you know, but you can't.
Yeah, no, you can't.
Someone.
Take them home.
Yeah.
I know there have to be professional boundaries, and that's, I guess, I know. And there's you have to be very careful and use your common judgment there. But in the sense of if you think something's going wrong, the third rule again, I promise, I'll put them on the Blackboard site for everyone. But the rule is if you suspect something, you go higher, or you make an appointment to see the deputy principal or the principal. So you don't, if it's really worrying you, you don't keep it to yourself. You report it and go up the food chain, the hierarchy in the school. And that's what caring good teachers do. They don't turn a blind eye. That's what I'm saying. And you'd never forgive yourself if you knew something terrible was happening to a kid and you didn't report it. Or do you know what I'm trying to say? So that's very important. My rules, I'll write them up. Be on time, come prepared, respect your rights and the rights of others to learn, which is what I'm sort of really talking about now, and ask for help. So that was it. So look, we've got Tess, willingness to learn, our level of professionalism. Yeah, exactly. Having that it's a sort of a, but I guess what I'm saying in teaching, it is so special because our passion and commitment for teaching what we love to teach, because you're going to have your own specialist areas, but also our love of working with young people. We need to have, excuse me, a sense of our professional identity, and that often is shaped by our philosophy. And I guess this semester is a really good opportunity for you to, you know, think about that. And when we talk about the professional standards for teachers, because you'll be looking at achieving your graduate standards, how do those standards speak to some of the things that you valued? And, you know, like Terry said and Caitlin said about, you know, what's important, what are the important qualities in being a teacher? Yeah, so basically they were the kind of the big ideas we teased out today. With the large group, I had about 130 in the lecture theatre. It got very noisy, and they ran around and played Go, Bring, Go, and then I got them to discuss in their groups, and then before they did their personal, and it was hilarious because I dropped my microphone a few times and we had a few laughs. Yeah, so it was a lot of fun. But I just don't want, you know, I don't want you as external students to feel isolated or left out. So you're happy to do this kind of catch up each week. I mean, I could have been more formal and got the PowerPoint up, but I just really wanted to just touch base with you at this stage. How does that sound? Is that helpful or not?
Yes, very helpful.
Well, thank you, because tell me if it's not. I mean, I'm here to help you. This is going to be purposeful for you because you're giving up an hour of your time. So look, for next week, will you please have a good look at the videos if you haven't had a chance yet? Just think about the qualities. Did you agree, disagree? I mean, Robin Williams gets really provocative. He gets them to, you know, in Dead Poets Society, rip pages out. I don't think I'd ever be game to do that of a book. But have a look at what they did. And then have a look at the slides and willingness to learn. Yeah, and think about what we mean by this word curriculum, because I do want you to understand it can be very politicised. So, you know, and we're going to then look at the Australian curriculum, the document we're going to work from. And there are some powerful messages, particularly in the cross-curriculum priorities, an emphasis on the sustainability, an emphasis on acknowledging Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander perspectives and learning about Asia and Australia's engagement with Asia. And when that curriculum was reviewed, you should have seen what the very traditional reviewers said about those priorities. So we'll talk more about that. But I want you to think about curriculum per se. It's a concept. It's an important word. What does it mean to you? Because you're going to be working from curriculum documents in your careers. Goodness, I'm talking too much. We haven't got much time left. And I might try and do this from a different computer next week because I sort of feel like, I don't know, can you see me okay? Is it sounding okay? Yeah?
Yeah.
Karen, is it okay?
Yes,
Yep. All right, okay. Any quick questions before we sign off?
No, not a question, but there is actually a little button on the top right in your screen there that toggles between speaker view and grid view.
Yeah.
And you can see about 20 or 30 people's faces at a time.
Oh,
You
haven't
push
I
that
showed
little
them?
button.
I'm so sorry. I beg your pardon.
It's just for everyone.
Annie. Oh, look, thank you. Oh, Matt, isn't that? I'm embarrassed.
That's okay. It's all this technology. It takes a lot of getting used
Lauren,
to.
I'm so sorry, Annie. Oh, I'm so sorry to do that to you.
But just for everyone, you can actually see everyone in one
go.
go.
Yeah, how we do it like this. Hang on. Oh, why isn't that doing it? Oh, God. Gallery view. Is that better? Hang on.
Gallery view, yep.
Oh, slow learner here. Shannon says, Scott, Emma, I'm really sorry that you felt left out. So sorry about that. I beg your pardon. And you should have piped up and put me on the spot. Come on, don't be polite. Harold, all these people, thank you for that. Oh, my God. In the feedback, she doesn't even know how to use it properly. I'm sorry.
In your defence,
I promise I'll get better, hey?
It is a newer technology at QUT.
It is. And I'm in this weird room that, my God, it's sort of really a bit surreal, really. But I had a lot of trouble logging on, so I'm going to get some help from my colleagues next week because I just couldn't get... Yeah, it was a bit weird. So I'm sorry, everyone. I should have had you all up there, like this exciting checkerboard. Sorry about that. Now, Judy and Daniel and Scott and Emma, Shannon's got a picture, Leanne. Is that because, and Steph and Harold and Ben, is that because you didn't want to show your faces? How come like, oh, Leanne, whoa, there you are. There you are. Oh, good. It just makes it so much nicer, doesn't it? So look, I
have a 4-year-old running around the back.
Oh, that's okay. Now, just a quick question before we finish. I know 5 to 6 doesn't suit everyone. Should I experiment each week? Ben, hi. What should I do? Do you want to have the fixed time, 5 to 6? I know it's terrible in the sense of daycare and, it closes at 6. What? Just some quick thoughts. What do you think? Is it best to have the same time?
Yeah.
Yes? Because I will, God, I hope this records. I'm going to be so embarrassed if it hasn't recorded. It should record. I think it's recording.
Flashing to say it's recording.
Huh?
It's flashing to say it's recording.
Thank you. Fingers crossed, she says. Okay.
This time, I think it's good to have the same time. I mean, if it works for everybody else, this is a good time for me.
Okay. Well, I'll wait and see what the emails are in case I get some really strong emails. But, yeah, okay. So, I agree. All right. Well, listen, we're going to run out of time very, very soon. I can't understand why it hasn't cut yet. So, any last minute quick things before we finish up, and hopefully I can post this. Just check the chat, whether I've missed something on the chat. I prefer a fixed time. I agree. Good. Okay. All right. Well, look, I've got to switch that off. Now, this thing's not working. Here we go. Oh, the mouse is freezing on me now. Oh, what a week with technology, I tell you. So I'll post some follow-up. This will take a while to flick over to be recorded. Fingers crossed I can post it. But, don't hesitate to come with questions when we catch up next week. So, if there's something that you've read since we've been together this time next week and there's a question, don't be polite. I want to hear from you because you're giving up an hour of your time and I want it to be worthwhile. And as I said, I didn't use the PowerPoint. I thought it was just better to talk. So has that been all right for you? Has it been worth it? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
I should get you to do the thumbs up. You probably know I won't do that. Yeah? Okay, well, don't forget, don't be polite either. Don't forget to email me. Terry's laughing at me. Don't forget to email me if there's anything in particular you'd like me to address in the Zoom next week. Send me an email, and that way I can compile a running sheet. I'm more than happy to do that, and I'll put that in my message too. Okay, so you happy to get the Zoom link on the Monday before? Is that enough notice for you? If we just get in this routine, how does that sound?
Yeah.
All right.
Fair enough.
Well, listen, thank you everyone. It was a bit garbled and I'm sorry about my clumsy start. So fingers crossed, it's flashing. What does that mean? Listen, I think we might finish up. Is that okay? Yep. All right. Well, thank you so much for giving up your time. And don't forget to shoot me an email. And I do apologise. Learn from your mistakes, don't you? Hey, what? All right. Have a good evening, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone. We'll stop now. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Right.